Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be a very special reading vlog. If you can't tell by the title of the video, my shirt, maybe some of the books behind me, I love dragon-centric fantasy. One of my very first experiences with dragon fantasy was the Eragon series. It was such a nostalgic series for me. I consider it one of the books that really got me into reading, not just like bigger books in general, keeping me reading throughout my tween years, but also just reading high fantasy. So when I found out that we were returning back to the land of Eragon, back to the land of Allegro, I knew that a reread was in order. So by the time you are watching this, Murtagh will have either just come out or it's going to come out at the end of this month, November 2023. So I went out on a quest starting in September to reread every single book in the Eragon series so far. I have read all of these 4 books before. I have not read The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm before, so this was a journey. This was a journey of page count, of fantasy adventure, of trials, of tribulations, meeting some very nice, very lovable characters for almost what feels like the first time, because I'm a very different reader than I was in 2005 when I first started this series. So I went ahead, reread all the books, read this little guy for the first time, had an absolute blast doing it. So yeah, let the vlog begin. Hey friends, I am so excited to get started with this vlog. First book, of course, is going to be Eragon. This is the book in the series that I have reread the most number of times. I absolutely loved this book. This is my beloved copy. It even has me as a child put a book plate in it, covering up my last name there, but you can see I loved this book so much as a kid. And you could tell by the way that I even put a book plate in it that it was a favorite. This is definitely a relic of a much different era, one where hardcover books were $18.95 for new releases, and the back of the book says that the author is 19 years old. So this, at least this copy of Eragon that I bought, was purchased before Eldest had even come out, was in the works. I remember very distinctly, I was at a Girl Scout camping trip with my troop, and one of the troop leaders, one of the moms, she was reading this book and the cover drew me in. I was a kid who loved fantasy, who loved anything magical, loved dragons. I think, I don't want to mix my timeline up, but I think I'd recently seen at least one of the Lord of the Rings movie adaptations, was really big into fantasy, and I became obsessed with this book. I needed to have it. I loved the cover. I learned that the dragon within it was a girl, which was like super cool to me at the time. I don't know if I had just never heard of a girl dragon like myself, or if that wasn't like a standard thing at the time. So we're gonna get started on this journey today. So this is about a young farmer boy named Eragon, and he finds a mysterious stone in the woods that turns out to be a dragon egg. It hatches and he discovers that a lot of different groups are after this egg, and he does not want to put his family in danger, so he embarks upon a quest to find out maybe his inheritance, who he actually is, and whether or not he can resurrect the dragon riders of old that are now just mere myth, and maybe potentially help start a revolution against a corrupt ruler. So yes, I'm so excited for this, ready to dive in. I have not decided what like the format of this vlog is going to be like. Tentatively for right now, at least for Eragon, this is almost 500 pages, so I think I'll update around every 100 pages or so, or if there's like a natural progression or place where it's like a stopping place. Although, you know, this one's the shortest and I might just speed through this one. From what I can remember, this is a pretty quick and easy read, at least for me, especially now being an adult and a very I don't know, like I read a lot of adult fantasy, so going back into this world is not gonna be too difficult. So I feel like this is the easiest one for me to read in the series and will take the least amount of time. But I think we'll try and read 100 pages, see where we go from there, give updates, because I don't want this vlog to be a feature-long length movie, although we do have 4 books in the main series plus a bonus book, so you know, it might just be an hour long anyway. But ready to start Eragon. I'm so excited for this journey. So come along with me. So excited to dive into this, and I will check back in with an update later. So I am now about 100 pages into Eragon. I think that's a really good place to stop, take a moment to discuss this book a little bit. I'm very excited. We've taken about 100 pages to set up the story, set up the stakes, set up the adventure. This is very much, it very much gets a lot of inspiration from Star Wars A New Hope, and then like set it in more of a Lord of the Rings sort of world, especially this first book. We have a lot of familiar fantasy tropes in this one, and from what I can recall, like I think this one is definitely the most tropey in the series, and the one that really borrows almost a lot from other plots and just other very well-known tropes. Doesn't really reinvent the wheel, but gets the job done, starts a really good series. This is just, guys, this is so nostalgic to read. Like, I'm reading this, I remember, first of all, I remember thinking that this was a lot more pages. Like, it felt longer when I was a kid reading it, but it was only 100 pages. We met Eragon, we met his main companion for this book, Brom, which is the village storyteller, an old man who has some secrets, may be connected to this secret society of dragon riders. And we also have Eragon meeting his dragon, Saphira, and they're going on this avenging quest. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with this reread so far. The chapter that I stopped at is Theron's Ford, so if you know, you know. But yeah, I'm really at this point in Eragon, all we've done is set up the story, introduce the characters, and now we're gonna start, you know, getting a little bit more. This is definitely a travel story. It also has a lot of magic building, world building. Eragon's learning about himself, learning to become the protagonist of this series. So yeah, I'm very excited to keep reading. I can't wait to meet more characters that are going to become staples of this series. Very much looking forward to that as well. But that's all I have for this update. Just a very, very charming start to this reread and very nostalgic. And I'm looking forward to reading the next section of this book and updating you all. I don't know if I will update in like 100 pages. Depends on how fast I'm reading this and like when I want to stop and give an update, because I'm really enjoying this. This was such a good idea for me to reread. This has just been such a delightful, nostalgic read so far. So looking forward to see my feelings on the next couple of 100 pages of Eragon, and I will talk to you later. Oops, I accidentally finished Eragon without giving any other details or updates to this vlog. This was so much fun to read. This was just so much fun, so nostalgic. Definitely this is the one that I've reread the most in the series. I remembered pretty much everything from it, but just getting to read maybe even some plot points and some reveals that me as a child like did not see the setup for and then was absolutely shocked. You can definitely see how this book was influenced by both The Lord of the Rings and Star Wars Episode 4 with a lot of plot points and a lot of characterizations and character types of characters, but I had a really good time reading it. Yeah, this was really great. I can definitely see where this book influenced my reading journey so much as me loving dragon forward fantasy, high epic fantasy, just these epic fantasy stories that I still love reading as an adult to this day. So definitely so nostalgic. I think of the things that I remember from this series, pretty much 90% of them happened in this book. So I'm very intrigued to reread the rest of this series. Nothing much to say, good if not like a stereotypical start to a series. Like this doesn't reinvent the wheel. It has a lot of tropes and it has a lot of plot points that are pretty common, but you know, you don't always need to reinvent the wheel. And also since this came out in like 2005, you know, this probably did inspire a lot of writers that are around my age. So, you know, a lot of it's hard to tell. Is this tropey? Is this things we see all the time, especially in coming of age, chosen one type of stories? Probably yes, but also probably this influenced a lot of other stories. So I hesitate to call it totally tropey. We're only very briefly introduced to some of my favorite characters in the series in this book, so I'm excited to get more of their points of views in the next book. Eragon right now, he's a young man still. He just turned 16 in this book, so he's got a lot of growing to do. He definitely right now at least is a little bit too goody-goody of a main character for my liking. I've totally noticed over the years I tend to prefer books and stories with very morally gray protagonists, so it's fun to kind of go back and read from someone who is just like so, like there's no moral gray bones to Eragon's body. He wants to do the right thing. He even kind of falls into like that Batman trap of not wanting to kill anybody. So sometimes along the road you kind of realize that maybe not killing your enemies, they're gonna come back and stab you in the back later. So he's got a lot of growing to do. I'm excited for the next book. Sorry if this update has seemed a little bit fragmented. The mail is happening right now in my apartment complex right now, so my dogs are very invested and very noisy about it. So I've kind of had to like start and stop a couple of times, but I had a really good experience reading this, and yeah, physical reading far superior to the audiobook. Honestly, since you know this series is coming out on Disney Plus as a series, which is so exciting because we can all agree the movie was very bad, I demand full cast audiobooks. I think these books not only deserve them, but I just cannot get over in the audiobooks, which I would love to listen to some of the audiobooks, but the dragon's voices, Solombo's voice, like all of the creatures have this like really growly, monstrous voice that I can't get behind. That's not how I picture them in my head. So audiobooks, I'm not going with audiobooks. I'm primarily reading these physically. So yes. This is my demand for a full cast audiobook. Just like the His Dark Material series, I think that would be really cool for this series to get some new audiobooks, but that's just my dream. But we are done with Eragon and we're moving on to the next book in the series, which is Eldest. I remember when these books were coming out and when we got the cover reveal, we were all so excited to see the new dragons on the cover. What color would they be? I remember there was this whole thing because Eragon and Eldest both start with E, have the same number of letters and everything. So like really I remember trying to guess like the titles of the books and the names of the books and like who each dragon on each book belonged to. That was just so exciting. So we're moving on to book 2, which is Eldest. This one is significantly bigger than Eragon, I believe. Eragon with the including all of this in the back, which tells you how to pronounce everything, is almost 700 pages. I think Eragon just hit 500 pages with all this in there, so it's bigger. I think the books continue to get bigger as the series progresses. I know with this one, as a kid, I was a little disappointed when I found out we weren't following Eragon the whole time, and I think the biggest B plotline in here is Roran and everyone else in Carvajal. I remember as a child reading these, I was so bored during those parts. I just wanted to get to Eragon and what I thought was the adventure. So I'm interested to see how I'm gonna feel about that moving on, because obviously I'm a more mature reader, and honestly, some things that I guess happened at the beginning of this book, I thought they happened at the end of Eragon. So that's very interesting. No spoilers, but if you know, you know, like some things that happened right after the battle, I thought they happened in that book, but they happened in this one, which, you know, what an explosive start. But anyway, I was talking about how I'm very invested to see, now that I have like more years behind my belt, I have more of a patience for longer books, and I've definitely read a ton more books that have multiple points of view. I'm interested to see how I feel about those Roran sections, because I was not a fan as a child. I thought they were very boring. But that could change, and I'm interested to see if it's going to change. So this one, the book itself is 668 pages, so I'm gonna try and have more updates than I did for Eragon. That was so nostalgic. I had so much fun breezing through it. So this one I am gonna try and have more updates. Very interested to see how I feel about the pacing, because as a kid, as a child critic, I did not like the pacing. I thought it was a poor decision to follow Roran and Carvajal, but I'm thinking that that's going to be more interesting to me now as an adult. So that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see, maybe, you know, do my favorite characters change upon a reread? Like, as we get more into other characters and other points of view other than just Eragon, are my favorite characters going to change or not? That'll be interesting. One thing I noticed before we dive into this, I don't need it because I just finished Eragon last night, but at least for this one, it has the synopsis of Eragon in it. That's so nice. Please, 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 let's bring those back. That would be wonderful if epic fantasy stories had that, just because, you know, it's nice just to get a little recap. Sometimes I'm not in the mood to reread a full 500, 600 page book before diving into the next one if, you know, they're coming out and I'm reading them as they come out. So I like that. This is apparently like a very demanding clip. I'm demanding full cast narrated audiobooks, and I'm also demanding a return of synopsises for the previous book at the beginning of epic fantasy series, because I quite enjoy that. But yeah, it's time to dive into Eldest now, and I'm very, very excited. So let's get into it. Okay, it is time for my first update on Eldest. I've decided to give an update every like 25%. So made it through the first 25% of this book, and as of right now, my little kid intuition was absolutely right. I still think that Roran's story is just not as exciting as Eragon's, which, to be fair, is hard, I feel like, to make his point of view as exciting as Eragon's, because right now Eragon is going to the land of the elves, while Roran is trying to figure out like who the Razak are, which we as the reader already know. And even though it is going to become different in the future, right now in this first 25%, his story is very much like a mirror to Eragon's, with Razak appearing at Carvajal, figuring out what to do about it. So yeah, not as exciting. Also interesting that a lot of this I thought happened at the end of Eragon, which, you know, a lot of the beginning part of this book happens immediately after, like the next day after the events that happen at the end of Eragon. I still thought it happened at the end of Eragon, but that's okay. Eragon is almost to the land of the elves. It's very funny as an adult, picking up more context between his feelings towards Arya, because as a very naive kid, I think I just remember him feeling like a connection to Arya, because like she was an elf and he was a dragon rider. I don't think I picked up on the fact that he was having romantic feelings towards her until like much later on, and then I was like, whoa, this came out of nowhere. But as an adult, like the signs are there. Eragon doesn't know that they're signs, to be fair, and so neither would my, let's see, when did this come out? 2005. Neither would my 4th or 5th grade self, so that is definitely part of the fun of rereading childhood favorites, that you maybe pick up on some nuances that you just didn't understand or didn't even have like the context to understand, like what those descriptions were, what those feelings were. So I find that very interesting. I do find it also very interesting how already you can tell this is written by someone more mature than the last book, obviously, since Eragon was written, I believe, you know, when the author was 16 years old. So there's a lot of growth there. I think that's in like this entire series, that every single book is like definitely a lot more complex and better written than the one after it, which is so frustrating because I never want to say like, you know, push through the first book in a series to enjoy it, but you know, I don't know. I think if you don't have the nostalgia of this series, reading the first book is going to put you off from reading the series, because it's definitely not written as well as the rest of the series. But I'm enjoying my time with this. That's pretty much all I have in terms of updates. It's a pretty slow start. I'm still not liking the Roran chapters as much as the Eragon chapters. I'm sure though, because I think once Eragon gets to Ellesmere, the land of the elves, I'm pretty sure once he gets there and he starts like his training sequences, that's when Roran, like, they kind of start traveling and there's more like intriguing action in that. So I think they do a little flip-flop, so we'll have to see, but I am enjoying this so far. And you know, I'll get to the 50% marker of this book and I will check back in when I'm there. This is going to be a very, very short eldest update. 50% of the way through, my feelings on Roran still the same. I don't care. I know that sounds harsh, but again, they're still in Carvajal at this point. So I think, you know, from 50 to 75% of the way, they'll actually start to make some progress there. Eragon just got Ellesmere. So honestly, this book, pretty bad pacing so far. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying my time reading it. Still nostalgic, but everything that I remember happening in this book hasn't happened yet. Well, I remember most of Roran's story, so I shouldn't say that. But like Eragon's trajectory, he hasn't really done any of those things yet. But I'm actually 48% of the way, but I decided to make a 50% of the way update because I just got to Nasawada's first point of view chapter, and I just want to give some unbiased thoughts before I read them. But I'm very, very excited for that segment because Nasawada, when I was a kid, she was like, if not my favorite character, one of my favorite characters. So I'm hoping that, you know, 50% of the way in, I'm hoping the next 50% is gonna be a little bit better, especially because we're gonna introduce some more points of view, and also just have more things happen that I am engaged in. So there's that. Short little update. 50% of the way, I'm a little nervous, but hopefully I will have a different outlook on this book by the 75% mark, because right now Eragon's better. Maybe not in terms of writing wise, but definitely enjoyment wise. So I'm going to go read some chapters from Nasawada's point of view, and I will check back in once I've made it to the 75% marker of eldest. Okay, I'm very pleased to report that I'm now 75% of the way through Eldest, and this last section was a whole lot more engaging. Eragon's part continued to be interesting. Roran's part there wasn't a lot of Roran in here, which I think made it my favorite of the parts so far. I'm so sorry, Roran fans. I'm sure he gets better. I can't remember if he does or not. I'm sure he gets better. But we also have the introduction of Naswada as a point of view main character, and the introduction of Elva, which is such a cool character. I remember thinking that was like an interesting concept when I was a kid, but really the kind of horror and terror of Elva's existence, it's so fascinating. And it's so fascinating to see kind of like such a well-intentioned thing that Eragon did, creating something very like not great for Elva. I think she's gonna continue to be a really cool character. Her and Naswada, like their back and forth was very interesting. Also Angela's with them, so like all three of them love what they're doing. Let's go girls. Like that was like very exciting. We only got I think 3 chapters from like the Serta crew, I'll call them, point of view, but what I did get was very exciting. So I am very excited to finish this up. I believe at the end of this, you know, everyone's kind of going to come together, and yeah. So I'm trying to keep this like kind of spoiler free, but I feel like if you are watching this, you either have read the series before or you don't have interest in reading the series and maybe are just watching for some reason and don't care about spoilers. But essentially, Eragon admits his feelings for Arya, and he's been like very adamant once they get to Elismira about admitting his feelings for Arya, and Arya does not reciprocate them, and she keeps telling him no, and he keeps not taking no for an answer, and he like cries about it and breaks down. And as a kid I was like, no, they should be together. But as an adult, I'm like, dude, give it up. First of all, you have more important things to be thinking of. And, you know, you just gave the same spiel to Saphira, essentially. But on the other hand, she keeps telling you, hey, I like you as a friend. Let's not ruin our friendship. And he keeps going at it until the friendship is ruined because he does not accept her as just a friend. So that is kind of shitty behavior on Eragon's part. It's very hard for me to feel for him in that moment, just because it's totally okay. His feelings are totally valid of being disappointed, but at the point where he like has like a big cry over it and is like upset about it, he has already talked to Arya about this or had like a conversation about it at least 3 times. And she has rejected him every single time. And she's been nice about it. She's been nicer than she could be. He even like went out of his way to apologize to her and tell her that he accepted that they would just be friends and that he's not gonna keep pushing it and making her uncomfortable. And then he does it again. Like, buddy, come on. You can find someone else. I think just because I can relate more to Arya in that situation of just men not taking no for an answer, men not wanting to be your friend if there's not like a romantic like option there, just with like the way that he would but essentially through his actions he's saying he'd rather just not be friends with her at all, if he can't be romantically, if there's not a hope of their relationship turning romantic, which just sucks. So I don't know how like their friendship progresses. Like I said, I think the more that I'm reading this one, the more I realize I don't really remember anything about the last 2 books in the series. So yeah, the more that I read this, I'm like, Eragon, you have some growing up to do, which whatever. He's a 17-year-old boy at this point. Absolutely, like, you know, we were all different people at 17, we can hope. There's a lot of growth going on. You know, maybe as his frontal lobe develops, he'll get like less annoying in that sphere, but it's been enjoying watching him train, watching Saphira train, getting some history and background information about both the writers in the magic system. So that's been cool. Just haven't really enjoyed his relationship with Arya, but hopefully that's resolved. Overall, definitely a whole lot more optimistic of an update than my 50% of the way update. So I just, you know, have 25% more to go. So I'm on page 493 of 668. So definitely doable. We'll be finishing this soon, and then really exciting to get into what is essentially like newish content for me, since I don't remember near as much from the second 2 books as I have the first 2 books in the series. So gonna keep on reading this, finish it up, and I will talk to y'all later. Okay friends, so I finished Eldest, and you know, I definitely think this is probably a stronger written book than Eragon. I just enjoyed Eragon a little bit more. Unpopular opinion, I think I really love a good training like sequence. I like, I feel like a lot of people might say I like the info dumps of just like history and the world building and magic building, and I really like Eragon's time in Elismira. It is a lot of time spent in Elismira, which a lot of people might think is boring. I find those chapters more engaging than Roran's more action-driven story, but by the end of this book, we do have characters coming together, reveals that are revealed that I remember just being absolutely shocked by as a kid. And the gang is essentially all back together again. I think they split up again in Brissinger, but I'm not sure. I don't remember like any of Brissinger or Inheritance. I remember like the basic like storyline from here and how the story resolves, but not much else. So honestly, very exciting diving into the next book, but I enjoyed it. I think this definitely, even though it isn't the middle book in a trilogy, feels kind of middle booky syndrome for me, but I still thought it was enjoyable. I finished it. I had a lot of fun reading the Nasawada chapters and also getting to know Angela and Alva a little bit more, and then of course Eragon's chapters as well. So yeah, I am finished with Eldest and moving on to the next book in the series, which is Brissinger. And I feel like for this one, I honestly kind of almost feel like the Yellow Dragon should have been on the second book and then the Red Dragon on the third book, just a little bit, just because of when we find out like who this Yellow Dragon is and who the Red Dragon is, you kind of, I don't know. I think it would make more sense, but it still does make sense that Glader is on the front page of this book. So I'm excited. I'm excited to read it. I think this cover looks very sharp. I wasn't a fan as a kid. I didn't like how it was mostly black, but it makes sense if you're going to keep like the gold typography and everything else. You can't make the book gold as well. So I think it looks sharp. I also think it's very interesting. At the beginning of the book, we now have a change of printing, or actually I'm not sure if you know this, maybe was it in the first copies of this book or not, because this one and Inheritance I picked up secondhand as an adult because I read the other 2 books from my local library as a kid. I didn't actually own them. So we see here that it is now called Inheritance, not trilogy, but just Inheritance book 3, and this is Brissinger, or the 7 Promises of Eragon Shadeslayer and Saphira something in Elvish that I am not going to try and butcher. So yeah, moving on to book 3, very excited about it. So yeah, I'll update you. I think I'm gonna do the same thing for this one, update it 25%, 50%, and 75%. So I will update once I finish the first 25% of this book, and I will talk to y'all then. Okay, hi friends. I am 25% of the way through Brissinger, and I am enjoying it. It's already started out. I feel like the pacing and just the storytelling a lot better than Eldest, just in terms of the pacing, having the characters like immediately like be doing action. Another cool thing, you know, I've mentioned it in Eldest, like when I was talking about Eldest, I'll mention it again. There's a synopsis of both Eragon and Eldest at the beginning of this book. I think that should be standard in fantasy. It is so nice, even though I'm like reading these books back to back to back, so I don't necessarily need it. I can think of quite a few series that would be very helpful to have that at the beginning of the books. So yes, can we please have those back again? I'm sure some books still do have them, but I do read a lot of fantasy and it's not that common to see them. So little request, I hope we see that more like reappear in the future. But 25% of the way in, Nasawada is a badass. She's one of my favorite characters. Honestly, probably at this moment, my most enjoyable scenes when I'm reading are her and Elva. That's the most interesting to me. And I really like Angela as a character too. I really like that through line. Eragon as a character, he's still got a lot of learning to do. He's still obsessed with Arya, and he makes some points why Arya is like one of the very few people that he could be with based on his circumstances and his extended life and his experiences, but still the girl said no. So leave her alone, Eragon. And he's still very much a character who wants to be so lawful good. And I prefer characters that are maybe not as rigid in their ways of thinking. But I think he's challenging some of his own preconceptions, and he's growing a little bit as a character, which is nice to see. There are some things that I'm not agreeing with him, and I definitely feel he makes a very big decision about a character's fate, and multiple characters, including Arya and Queen Islanzadi, the Queen of the Elves, tell him that it's a stupid idea and not to do it, and to do something else more definitive, and he refuses to do it. So I think he needs to be a little more ruthless. I don't think that's going to be the point of this series, but I feel like he still has some growing up to do. He's this figurehead of this rebellion, and he's going off and doing quests like on his own, which he should not be doing. It's engaging to read about, but he definitely is a character that is very frustrating to read at times because you can just see the mistakes he's about to make and he still makes them, but that's okay. I feel like kind of the trajectory of that and the lessons he learns along the way is pretty standard for YA, which tend to have, I've noticed, not all, so don't come for me, but as a whole, YA protagonists and like protagonists for like children's books, you know, it's more, morality has more to do with it, because obviously if your frontal lobe is developed as an adult, you can read about villainous characters, morally gray characters, and like, you know, to separate that in fiction. I feel like there's more of a divide in children's fiction and young adult fiction to be like, these are good guys, these are bad guys, just in the way that, you know, storytelling is moralistic. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. Definitely a lot better than Eldest so far. And I feel like this, I thought, like, seems a lot shorter than Eldest, but this one, my first two, the pages are like thick, parchmenty sort of pages. These are the Bible thin pages. So I don't love that. I prefer like a thicker page, just in terms of durability and readability. Like, I always feel like I'm gonna rip these pages, but I am enjoying my time so far. So far so good in Brissinger. It's very hard to say that because as a kid, I just apparently completely ignored like the pronunciation guides and glossaries in the back and thought it was Brissinger, which is not right. It's Brissinger. And it's actually, I think, like a real, like, is it Norse? It might be a Norse word for fire. Like, it's a real word from a real language. But as a kid, I thought it was Brissinger. It's Brissinger. But that's really hard to like change in my mind because, you know, as a kid, that's what I was used to reading in my head, definitely. But yeah, I'm definitely enjoying this so far, and that's pretty much all I have. So far so good. I will check back in with everyone with another update when I've reached the 50% mark of this book. Okay, so a little Brissinger update. I did not update when I got 50% of the way through this one, just because with the way the action was going, there wasn't a substantial update that I felt like would be beneficial, and I just wanted to keep reading. So we are now 75% of the way through Brissinger, and this one I feel like I definitely understand why this is not a trilogy and it is in 4 books, and I think there's a lot of important things that need to be set up to make it more realistic for Eragon to be like the chosen one, or the main ruler, or one of the main key power players in this revolution, because he, as a child, he's got a lot of growing up to do, and I think adding another book between the second book and the last book in this series was the right call, just in terms of Eragon's both his emotional development and then also just like, you know, his training and magical development. So I totally get why we have another book. I kind of feel like for this one he kind of goes full Tolkien-esque into just describing, which, you know, I really love. I really do love. I love info dumps. I love like rabbit holes, especially in fantasies that like dive into like specific cultural things that are interesting, that may or may not have any bearing on the story, or if they do, you don't need the amount of detail. So for example, in this one of the big things Eragon is doing in the middle of this book is traveling to the dwarves and overseeing them electing a new leader, a new king, and he's throwing his name in the ring for his friend Auric, who we met in book 1. That does not need to be like almost 200 pages of dwarf politics, but it is, and I had a lot of fun. I found it very interesting. It doesn't necessarily move the plot forward. I totally get why it's in this story. It could have been like very quickly wrapped up, but like Paolini goes into depth when it comes to just describing every single aspect of this whole entire complicated political and religious process, and I just think that's fascinating. Definitely didn't need all of those details, but I really enjoyed having them. Rorin's chapters, I do think they're a little bit better now that they're more tied into the Varden and the things that the Varden are doing at large. I still think Nasawada is just a really cool character. I really like Elva and like her process, and just, you know, like with the magical curse that she has, kind of like discovering and kind of going through the motions of what kind of, like, if you have a magical power that can benefit mankind but it comes at a personal risk to yourself, are you obligated to use that magical power for the greater good? And it's interesting because you have someone like Eragon who believes absolutely with no hesitation that even if it's detrimental to the individual, that you should do that for the greater good, whereas you have other characters like Alva who has a power that is very physically taxing for her. It's changed, like it made her grow up physically and mentally super fast, and it also like puts her in physical danger, and a lot of people think that she is being so selfish for not wanting to continually risk her livelihood for the greater good. But I think that's so interesting because it makes her like a very nuanced character, and I think a good foil to like Eragon and some other characters in here who are very much like anything for the greater good is good. I think like probably like that is like the most interesting aspect, like the most interesting internal character journey. I kind of wish, because we don't really get a point of view of Elva, we just see her and interact with her through Nasawada and Eragon most primarily, so I kind of wish we had more of her point of view, because I do think that is very fascinating to kind of feel beholden to magic in that way. But yeah, 75% of the way through. The last 25%, I'm not really sure what's gonna happen. Like this has been very fun. As I've been reading this, I've been like picking up things here and there that I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Like just like broad strokes. I think I've only read this once in my life, so definitely not as familiar to me as Eragon or Eldest, but I am still like picking up things along the way, remembering like basic story plot lines and story beats that are happening. I think I remember how this one ends in terms of some things, but not others. And again, I don't remember like anything about inheritance, although I'm sure sure once I start reading it that will change, just how it did for this one. The Trial of the Long Knives, I don't know if I mentioned that even. I don't remember. That might have been in the 50% mark, might have been in the 25% mark. Nasawada is just such a cool character. I love her. I think that she complements Eragon quite nicely because they both have the same goals, but they have very different perspectives based on like their privileges. And like, you know, Eragon got to grow up in a pretty idyllic, like far removed situation, where Nasawada's kind of always grown up at the front of the Varden, at the front of the resistance and the war. So it's interesting seeing their two perspectives because they're on the same side, but they're constantly in this book kind of fighting about what to do, and in particular what Eragon's place in the resistance is. So yeah, I'm enjoying this one. I'm having like such a fun time kind of just, you know, reading these books in between. I don't know if you can tell from my hair or my shirt because I don't know when this is going to come up. I started this vlog in September and it's October now. It might be November when this comes out, I'm feeling, but it's just been so nice to dive into like a very cozy, nostalgic, for the most part, fantasy series in between like all of the horror content that I'm consuming this month. So that's been pretty fun. I honestly feel that I can finish like the last section of this one because everything's picking up. It's just going to be more action-packed and I'm sure more fast-paced. We're ramping up for a battle, I feel like, or at the very least Eragon and Saphira are going back to Elismira. I remember what happens there. I don't remember what happens to Nasawada and Rorin. So it's kind of like a new reading experience, also kind of a nostalgic reading experience at the same time. So that's been very fun. But I'm going to finish Brisingr and then I will update when I'm done and when we're ready to start the fourth and final book in the Inheritance series. So I finished Brisingr last night and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the reading experience of this one. Definitely a weird mix of nostalgia as I was remembering as I went on what happened in this book, and also like the feeling of reading a new book because I also forgot a lot of what was going on. Definitely very much a world building heavy, exposition heavy sort of story. I think this one is probably, I would have to imagine, I'm gonna guess this one might be the most divisive in terms of fans, just because we spend so much time on things that, you know, don't particularly need that much time. I love being so immersed in a world and like reading all of those details, but if you don't want like 150 pages of how dwarves like conduct politics, you know, this one might be harder for you to get through, and it definitely took me the most time so far to read. But I will say the point of views I thought were better executed. Rorin's still my least favorite character to read from, just because I just feel like this isn't his fault as a character, but now that he's with the Varden, I would rather be reading from a different point of view in the Varden. So there's that. And just, I feel like let's give him a break. Let's let him have his happily ever after, or at least not just like keep putting him in these impossibly like hard situations to get out of. But yes, Eragon's cool. Nasawada has some really great chapters in here. And just, I'm looking forward to the next book in the series. The ending of this was like very much pulling at the heartstrings. Honestly, this was the first book in the series where I felt like really packed emotional weight, and not just, I mean, there's been character deaths, there's even been major character deaths in each book in this series, but there's a character death in here where I don't even particularly, he's not one of my favorite characters, but just how characters who are close to him like reacted to the death and the implications of like what that death means for that character and the rebellion and just other people as well. really worked well. The ending of this really worked well for me. So I'm excited to dive into Inheritance. It's so crazy that I'm almost to like new content. I've got Inheritance, and then I have like that short story collection, and then Murtagh comes out, the book Murtagh comes out. I mean, hey, maybe the character might as well, who knows, but the new book comes out in November. So I'm very excited that I've managed to power through and read some extremely heavy fantasy books within the span of 2-ish months, because I started this vlog in September. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, we're gonna be moving on to Inheritance. We have a gorgeous green dragon on the cover. One of the only things that I remember from this book is whose dragon it is. This is almost 900 pages, and I will try and still do the thing where I update it 25, 50, and 75%, and then at the end, yeah, I'm excited to dive into it. You know, as I kept reading, I remembered less and less about the books. So this is primarily a new reading experience for me, which is fun. I'm having fun with this vlog. I hope y'all are having fun as well. But yeah, gonna dive into this, looking forward to it, and I will update you when I've read 25% of this absolutely massive tome. Hey friends, so I am now 50% of the way through Inheritance. I was planning on updating this one more as I went along, because this is definitely the one that I don't remember like anything from at all. So practically a new reading experience for me. I don't know if you can tell by my voice though, I am recovering from being very, very sick. I could not do pretty much anything other than lay down. It was, you know, what became the world in 2020. I don't know if YouTube still has weird restrictions on saying those words or not about what kind of illness I had, but got it for the first time. It was really, really rough. And a lot of the time I was too sick to even just like lay down and listen to an audiobook. So yeah, it's been a long time since I last updated this vlog, but 50% of the way through, I did end up, you know, feeling better, recovering as I slowly recovered, able to actually listen to the audiobook on this one because I was still very, very sick and didn't feel like even holding like such a big book like this felt like a workout. So yeah, excuse my voice, I'm still recovering, but 50% of the way through this one, everything feels so brand new. What's interesting to me is that this is still very like exposition heavy and world building heavy, and it's interesting because it's the last book in the series. 50% of the way through, like I feel like there should have been more battles, more conflict, like we should be closer to our end game. So that's very interesting. It's definitely like a slower book. I don't know, obviously my nostalgia of this series as a whole is going to color my opinions. I do feel like maybe this one and Brissinger could have been combined, you know, like forsook some of that really rich world building that I do love, but there is a lot of time. There's a lot of chapters, like for example in this one, there's about 2 to 3 chapters that are uncovering a mystery, explaining something that could have been one. I enjoyed the 3 chapters, and especially me just like laying in bed listening to it. It was nice to listen to, but I definitely think that, you know, I think the second 2 books are definitely very differently paced than the first two books, which I think could, you know, impact some readers' enjoyment of the series, because this reads like a whole different beast than Eragon did. And also I think it's interesting because this one, while the writing is better, objectively better than Eragon, which is good, right? We want writers to continue to hone their craft, to continue to get better with each new book. But while this one is way better technically on a technical writing level than Eragon, it is very interesting to compare this one to Sleep in a Sea of Stars, which is just really, really well crafted, and a completely different beast altogether than this series, but definitely very interesting to see this author's growth, which is really, really cool. I really enjoyed To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. All that being said, I found that very interesting. The quest that Eragon is going on, that's the only thing I think I remember from this book. The revelation that he finds when he's going on this kind of side quest, you know, this darkest hour of the night when all hope is lost, everything is just going horribly for them. Galbatorix, Thorn, Murtagh, they're like winning. Everything is kind of lost, like a lot of morale and hope is lost for the Varden, and especially Eragon's feeling very low about things as well. This quest, I think I remember what they find, but that's the only thing I've been able to remember. So yeah, I'm still sick, as you can tell by my voice, and this has been very hard to get through. Just I don't know, it's gonna be a while before I get back to 100%, but yes, I'm very intrigued. Again, I think this one I will update 75% of the way through, because I don't think we're going to get that final battle, like that big final boss battle, until the 75% mark. I don't think we're even going to, which is interesting, because Galbatorix is this huge, big, evil presence. We've heard of his name since probably the first or second chapter in Eragon. We have never actually met him. We've never met him, we've never talked to him, we've never experienced him from anybody's point of view except through stories told through other people to Eragon about what it was like when he was a writer and then when he turned evil. So that's going to be very interesting. Like, we haven't seen him at all. We've seen him work through Murtagh, but we still haven't seen him, met Shuriken, his dragon. So yeah, interesting stuff. 50% of the way through, I'm enjoying it so far, and hopefully I'll be able to update at 75%, let you know how it's going, and I will talk to you all then. Okay, second to last update of Inheritance. I am like 68 to 70% of the way through this one, but I thought it was a really good point to stop and give an update because we are entering the final battle. That's right, the last 20% of this is gonna be the big final battle. I know I mentioned in the last update that it was kind of strange. We haven't actually gotten any scenes with Galbatorix, and Eragon still hasn't, but another character did pretty much immediately after the 50% mark, so definitely very interesting. Definitely don't remember. I remember Eragon's quest in this, like his side quest. I remember that. Don't really remember anything else, especially like Nasawada and Murtagh, their interactions. I don't remember that, but yeah. It's the final battle. The final battle is going to take place, and you know, I'm not too sure. I don't remember if this is like a YA book that pulls any punches or not, because I feel like it is more typical in YA to see that most of the main characters, maybe with the exception of one, survive. So we'll just have to see. We'll have to see. I at least know some of the characters survive because obviously there are books in the series, like additional series after this one. So some fates we kind of know, at least if they're living or dead at the end of this book. But yeah, I'm excited to read the final battle and finish this book. This vlog has been such a long time coming. I started it like the first week of September and it is now the first day of November. So gonna go finish this up, and I will talk to you all when I have finished this series. And we're done. we're done with the Inheritance, the 4 main book series, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this one a whole lot better than Brissinger. Honestly, I think this should have been kept a trilogy, just with some of the pacing, but I think my favorite books were this one and then the first book. So always nice to have a book series book ended with your favorites. So enjoyed that. Very interesting that this book, you know, I feel like almost the main conflict, or what you think is going to be the main conflict, wraps up pretty quickly. It wraps up pretty quickly. It's not that long. It doesn't actually take up a lot of page time in this. I updated at 70% when our main characters were getting ready to fight Galbatorix, fight the final battle, and by, I want to say, even 80%, that was pretty much wrapped up. And then the final 20%, we'll say 15%, we'll say it might have lasted until 85% that they were battling Galbatorix. The final 15% of this book was kind of exploring the political machinations and what all you have to do after that final battle is won, like wrapping up all of the, not loose ends, but you know, this country has just been through war. Allegasia has been war-torn for years and years, and just seeing all of the characters figure out their new responsibilities, what they have to do. We get to meet Fenn, which is this green dragon on the cover, and I did actually remember who his writer was, and I was very happy about that. I'm saddened by the, I would say, the big character death in here of the main character, kind of even, not even really main character that dies. I'm kind of saddened by it, just for, you know, some other characters. For them, I'm saddened for them. I feel like Roran should have died. I guess I am just a Roran auntie until the day I die, I suppose, because I did notice this one whole lot less Roran point of views, which I really enjoyed. He doesn't excite me as a character. There's nothing new about his character, and he can be your favorite character. That's totally cool. So please don't come after me, because I'm sure some of the characters that I was really invested in maybe aren't other people's favorite characters. Eragon also got a whole lot better in this in terms of character development, finding his true name, realizing that he's not the same person as he was in the book Eragon, which is absolutely the case. He's definitely matured as a character, which was good. Nasawada kind of took a little bit of a back seat, but her character arc was interesting. And Arya, I want more Arya. After this Murtagh book, I hope this Murtagh book goes well, and I hope we get a lot more Arya, because I just think she's the coolest. I really do. And she could be my favorite character in an ideal world. We didn't get like her point of view or enough about her character to make her my favorite, but I want the world for her. I want good things for her. I want to find out what she does next, especially where she is at the end of this book. So yeah, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun reading this series, and I did think this was a good conclusion. For me, one of my favorite books, The Priory of the Orange Tree, I know also has some criticisms about the final battle being short. I'm not like someone who reads high fantasy for epic battles. I feel like if you do, then the final battle in here, I feel like might be a little disappointing to you, because it was more internal than external battle in the end, and struggle in the end. And I don't know how I would have written it, and I do know, you know, based on the magic system and kind of building someone up to be invincible, how do you beat them, right? So I'm not someone who minds too much when battle scenes aren't exceedingly drawn out, exceedingly detailed, but if you are someone who loves the battle scenes more than anything else, you might be disappointed by at least Eragon's part. Roran has some things to do. I feel like if his character was a girl, he'd be called Mary Sue left and right. He just, you know, he should have died. He should have taken one for the team and died. I'm glad for his family that he didn't, but I was a little bit surprised that, slight spoilers, no major characters die at the end of this series. So I had a lot of fun, and now we're moving on to completely new content, which would be The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm, Tales from Allegasia, Volume 1, Eragon. This is very tiny. As you can see, not only in like how long it is, but also just compared to a regular hardback, it's quite a bit shorter. So this should not take me as long. Let's see how Okay, so it is not even 300 pages, and it's very, very short. It's almost like middle grade sized. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and read this entire volume and then give my final thoughts at the very end because it's very short. I don't think we need 4 updates on this little guy here. So yeah, I had a really good time. This was good. I enjoyed the conclusion of this series, and now we're moving on to post-game content, if you will. Just a little something extra. So looking forward to that. I will check back in when I am done with this. Okay, let's talk about it. I definitely finished this one in a lot less time than the other tomes in this series. It's a lot shorter. Reading the author's note in the back, it kind of started as like a writing exercise for Christopher Paolini, kind of dipping his toe back into the world of Allegro as he was working on To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, and it just kind of evolved into a little short story collection. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very fun. I am glad that I'm just now picking it up because while it does give you a taste of what Eragon's up to and what certain other characters are up to, I want more. And obviously we're getting that with Murtagh. I actually got, this vlog is just getting way too long to include it, but I did get an audiobook ALC from Libro FM. One of their November books was Murtagh. So I get to start that sooner than it comes out, which is just so exciting. So yeah, The Fork, the Witch, the Worm. We pretty much were following Eragon as he's trying to set up this academy, this living space, this training space for the next generation of writers and the dragons, of course. And you know, he's running into some struggles, some growing pains with trying to accomplish all of this a lot by himself. And the dragons, Eldunari, kind of come together and tell him, they're like, do you want to see what other people are doing? So the very first section, The Fork, we actually get to follow, we get to see what Murtagh's up to, and that's very exciting. I've always found him a very fascinating character that I do wish that we would have gotten to explore more and just see more from the point of view in the series proper. So we see what he's up to. It seems like he's on a really interesting path, so looking forward to picking up that book. The second part was actually written by, I almost said Eragon's, Christopher Paolini's sister, who was the inspiration for Angela the Herbalist. So the witch part, intriguing. It kind of gave more questions than answers, which I feel like anything having to do with Angela is going to kind of give you more questions than answers. She's still with Elva. It seems like, honestly, I would love to see Elva as a dragon rider. I think that'd be very, very fascinating because I think with the amount of power and the life path she's been forced to take until now, I think that having a dragon would keep her in check, help her like almost not even like live a normal life because a dragon rider is not normal in this world, but like she has so much power and has been through so much. Having a constant companion to kind of keep her in check, and also just like be a mentor and be someone who understands her, because Eragon and Saphira, they understand each other more than anybody else. I think Elva needs that in her life. I would love to see her become a dragon rider. So that was interesting. My least favorite part was probably the worm part. Even though it was interesting, it's the Urkels are telling one of their mythology and one of their tales of one of their heroes, and interesting, but it really did take up a lot of this book, and for the lesson it imparted, and just based on like the other 2 stories before, it was my least favorite. I just felt like it could have been shortened a little bit, and I wish we could have gotten more time with Murtagh, more time with Angela and Elva, because I just enjoy those characters more than listening to a fictionalized tall tale. Like, we're not even following characters that we've known before, but it was enjoyable, and at the end, you know, a dragon egg hatches. So definitely setting us up for some exciting things to come in Murtagh. So I finished this, very enjoyable. Definitely, I feel like if I would have read this when it came out, which it came out in in 2018, I would have been a little disappointed because I would have wanted more. I would have craved more, and I'm excited that I'm reading this and then just immediately I can dive into another book in the series. So I thought this was good. Very cute little bridging the gap between the series proper and then the new book about Murtagh. But wow, what a ride it has been. Let's see, this vlog has gone through 3 months, a haircut, and just a lot of life changes in between. It's crazy, but yeah, we're coming to an end. I had so much fun reading this series, getting to revisit just some wonderful storytelling. Had a lot of fun just rediscovering this series and just being so immersed in a dragon-centric series. So that is going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, subscribe to my channel for all of the bookish and cozy gaming content. Stay safe, keep it creepy, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!